Dying CEO gave Klender black card. Unexpectedly, she cured CEO. Turned out she is his only antidote. He thought he was just another dying man clinging to wealth. He thought she was just the quiet girl who mopped his marble floors. But when she touched his trembling hand, something in him shifted. A black con, a dying war, a secret that even his billions couldn't buy. What if the one woman who could save him was the one he nearly overlooked? The third floor of Rivetta Labs was always spotless by. That's when Clare Bennett worked. After the tech executives had gone home, after the sterile labs stopped humming, when silence wrapped around the chrome and glass like a shroud. She liked the quiet. It didn't ask her questions. It didn't dig into her past. It just let her mop. Tonight, she almost didn't hear the groan echoing from the far office, the executive wing where no one lingered past sunset. She hesitated, hand still on the mop. Another groan, this time sharper. He dropped the mop and inside the office, scrawled behind a walnut desk worth more than her yearly salary, was a man clutching his chest, gasping. The lights flickered, and for a moment she only saw the raw fear in his eyes. Then she recognized him. Jackson Reed, CEO, billionaire, Revita's founder, the man who'd once been on the cover of Time, hailed as the biotech savior of aging itself. And now he looked older than death. His skin was ashen, his fingers curled toward his chest like claws. She moved instinctively, grabbing the oxygen mask on his desk, a grim fixture lately, and pressed it to his face. "You've called 911, she whispered, though she hadn't yet. She would, but first. He stared up at her like he'd never really seen her before. Don't go, he croaked. I'm right here, she said, kneeling beside him. His eyes fluttered, and then through lips like cracked porcelain he mumbled, I thought I had everything. Something in her chest stirred, not pity, recognition. Because once, long ago, she had whispered that same thing into an empty church pew at midnight. 12 hours later, Claire sat in the hospital hallway, still in her janitor uniform. Her hands trembled. She hadn't planned to stay, but something wouldn't let her leave. She replayed the moment he was wheeled into the ambulance. How, even as he slipped into unconsciousness, his hand reached out blindly, and she had taken it. Then came the nurse. Clare Bennett? He blinked. The nurse handed her a sealed envelope, black, heavy, embossed with a silver crest. Inside, a block American Express Centurion card. A scribbled note. If I don't make it, give her this. She's the only one I trust. Below it, his signature. Clary stared, her pulse racing. There's a mistake, she whispered. Why would he? But the nurse was already gone. 3 days later. Jackson Reed didn't die. Against medical odds, and the whispers of his closest board members, he stabilized. Some called it miraculous, others credited sheer stubbornness. But when he opened his eyes, the first name he whispered wasn't his lawyer's. It wasn't his daughter's. It wasn't his CF. It was Claire. Back at Rivetta Labs. Claire, they want the card. He'd tried to return it, left voicemails, emailed. But the messages went unanswered. So she kept showing up to mop the marble floors, even though everyone now looked at her differently. The girl who saved Mr. Reed. He didn't care what they thought. She knew the truth. He hadn't saved him. He was nobody. At least until she found the luck rim. It was hidden behind a biometric scanner on level B2, a wing no one told the cleaners to touch. But that night the door was slightly ajar, and curiosity is a dangerous thing when paired with pain. Inside, dim blue lighting, tube cubes, files stacked to the ceiling. And photos. Photos of her. Clara's blood turned to ice. One was taken 5 years ago, outside a hospice in Atlanta. Another from a soup kitchen. The most recent was from last night. And then, the file folder. The Project Clare case subject. 319. Genomic anomaly. Autoimmune reversal. Cellular memory retention. She stumbled back, breath ragged. Her hands were shaking. He wasn't just a janitor. He was his test subject, his secret, maybe even his last hope. And Jackson Reed knew all along. Absolutely, here's the continuation. Session 1, the experiment he never filed. Rain pelted the windows of Jackson Reed's hospital suite like drumbeats of a storm long overdue. Outside, the world thought he was recovering, stable, grateful. But inside, Jackson sat upright in bed, eyes sunken yet burning with the weight of a secret too heavy for even his emaciated frame. He had built Revita Labs with one mission: to cure the incurable, to beat time, and he had, for others, not for himself. He glanced at the encrypted tablet beside him. On screen, Project Clara, status classified. He hadn't touched the file in 3 years, not since he buried the memory of her before she could know that her blood had once saved a child from a neurodegenerative disease. Before she could know that her DNA was unlike anything the world had seen. And now, she was back. But the woman in the hallway that day, clutching a mop and a warm rag, wasn't the girl he remembered. He was quieter, older. Still, the second she touched him, something inside him shifted. Pain eased, breath calmed, even the tremor in his left hand stilled. "What are you?" he had whispered into the oxygen mask. If she didn't answer, maybe she didn't know. Maybe she was never told. Because he never filed the experiment. Because falling in love with her and then walking away had broken more than his protocols. He'd broken 2 floors below. Claire held the folder like it might bite her. In her hands, Project Claire blurred under her tears. The fluorescent lights hummed above, sterile and cold. He scanned the notes, medical terms far beyond her GED, but some things were clear. Subject 319, name Clare Bennett. Notes: anomalous cell regeneration, rapid anti-immune profile, Cunyi markers. Origin unknown. At the bottom, one light chilled her to the bone. He wasn't his employee. She was his Her stomach turned. The black card in her coat pocket now felt like a collar. He knew. All this time he knew who she was. He let her scrub toilets and floors. He gave her a job under a fake name. He let her believe she was invisible. And when he started dying, he called for her. Because he needed her. Because he missed her. He shoved the folder back where it came from and turned to run, straight into Dr. Miles Garrett, Revita's chief scientist. He stared at her, thin, cold, unreadable. "You shouldn't be here." "What? I didn't mean to." "Room is for executive eyes only," Link said. He said, pushing past him. "Claire," he called after her. "He's awake. He's asking for you." He paused, then kept walking. Flashback. 5 years ago, Atalanta. A younger Claire sat beside a hospital bed in a cheap clinic, reading aloud to a 5-year-old girl with translucent skin and hair like spun sugar. Once upon a time there was a girl who didn't know she was magic. The child giggled, coughing between smiles. Inside the room stood a sharply dressed man, younger Jackson Reed, watching, studying. He had caught it once. "Why are you watching me?" she'd asked, suspicious. He'd smiled, a rare thing then. "Because your kindness doesn't match your blood work." She didn't understand. Until the girl, who was dying, didn't die. Until doctors called it a miracle. Until the man offered her a job in New York and then disappeared before she accepted. He ghosted her. He lost her family. She buried her faith in people. And now, years later, he had the audacity to ask for her? Be back at the later that night. Claire stood in the doorway. Jackson looked up. For a moment, silence sat between them like a third person in the room. Then he said softly, "You f—" Her lips trembled. "What is this, Jackson? Why me? Why hide it?" He looked away. "Because if I told you the truth, you would have run." "I'm running now." "I know," he whispered. But before you go, I need you to understand what you are." He shook her head. "I'm not a lab rat." "You're not," he agreed. "You're the only person I've ever met whose blood heals without trying. We tested it ethically at first. You were a donor. It changed everything. But when I saw your niece recover, I knew you knew it." His eyes darkened with shame. "Because I was afraid, because I felt something for you that scared me more than death." She stared, stunned. "It wasn't just your blood," he said, voice cracking. "It was you. Claire, I watched you care for people no one else saw. I watched you forgive the world while it broke your back. You were light, and I didn't know how to hold that without crushing it." Tears welled in her eyes. "You let me clean your floors for 3 years. You watched me suffer, struggle. I watched you survive. I needed to know. If I was dying, would the one person I loved?" she challenged. He looked at her. "Yes." That stopped her. He reached into the drawer and handed her something. And she gasped. It was her, at 20, with her mother smiling. "Where did you get that?" "I kept it," he said, "because if I die, I want the last face I see to be the one that reminded me I was human once." Claire dropped to her knees beside his bed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she whispered, "If that night you hadn't left me, maybe everything would have been different." He reached for her hand, trembling. "I know, and I've paid for that every day since." There's a sick cliffhanger ending. Jackson's monitors beat faster. He's struggling to breathe. Clara leans in, pocket. The doctors rush in. But something's wrong. None of the meds work. His body is resisting everything. Umaquitombo nakwi treatment upgraded chicky. But then Claire takes his hand, skin to skin, and in seconds, the heart monitor stabilizes. Everyone freezes. Miles looks at her like she's radioactive. "Get her out," he whispers to the nurse. "Now." But Jackson, barely conscious, "Don't he dare." He dare. Session 2, the tux that changed. The hospital lights flickered. Claire's hand was still in Jackson's, but the room wasn't the same anymore. Something had shifted, not in the monitors or in the sterile walls, but between them. Something ancient, raw, unforgiven. And just as the tension thickened to silence, her phone vibrated. Claire slowly pulled her hand away and reached into her coat pocket, confused. She hadn't heard from anyone in months, maybe years. He stared at the screen. No name, just a number. "He lied to you." Again, check the file timestamp. Her heart dropped. She spun to the tablet beside Jackson's bed, the one he never let anyone touch. Her fingers hovered. Her instincts screamed to run. But she touched. The project Claire opened again. This time she noticed it. "Lost modified, 3 days ago." He turned, trembling. "You told me this file was from years ago." Jackson was breathing hard, still weak from the episode. "It was. I reopened it. To find you. To try again. To tell you everything." Claire blinked. The betrayal burned colder now. "Or to finish what you started." No, Claire. He tried to sit up, but his muscles failed him. Her eyes filled with tears. "You knew where I was. You watched me scrub your damn floors like I was nothing. And now that your body's falling apart, suddenly I'm not disposable?" His voice cracked. "That's not why I brought you back." "But you did bring me back," she whispered. "Not because you missed me, not because you loved me. You brought me back to finish an experiment you never had the guts to file." Jackson said nothing. Oh, that silence. It was the last thread. He turned, walked out, and didn't look back. Claire stormed down 58th Street, her coat billowing in the wind, heels clacking against the wet sidewalk. Around her, New York buzzed, too busy to care that a woman was unraveling. He turned into a diner, same one she used to clean during graveyard shifts. It was mostly empty. Boots creaked, coffee steamed, a radio murmured Billie Holiday in the background. Claire slid into the back corner. She hadn't cried yet, not fully, not since before he left her years ago. But tonight, her whole body threatened collapse. A waitress, older kind old, brought over a menu. Rough night. Claire managed to nod. You want to talk about it? She offered, warm but not pushy. Claire gave a weak smile. It's a long story. The waitress winked. Aren't they all? Flashback. The night he left. Atlanta 5 years ago. Rain pounding the roof of the hospice. Claire waited by the vending machine with 2 steaming cups of cocoa. She was smiling. She had hope. She was wearing the dress he said he liked. But he never came. No text, no call, nothing. Later that night she went to the front desk, and the nurse handed her a sealed envelope. Inside, the single line. If I stay, I'll destroy you. Please don't wait. He never saw him again. Until now. Claire sat frozen, phone in hand. That text, from the unknown number, lied to you. Again. He zoomed in on the tablet photo she'd snapped before storming out. Wait. Something else was there. A signature, but not Jackson's. Miles Garrett. Her blood ran cold. Meanwhile, Revita Labs' private elevator. Miles Garrett walked into the restricted floor with a folder in hand. Inside, printed screenshots. Claire's genetic file. Her recovery stats. Jackson's vital fluctuations when near her. And stapled behind all that, a notarized, a patent application, regenerative transfer therapy, via human host. He walked into a sealed lab, nodded to a technician. She's getting too close, he muttered time to accelerate trials. The tech hesitated. Sir, what about the ethical board? Miles gave a cold smile. They won't make it to Monday. The knock came just after sunrise. Claire hadn't slipped. She was on the floor, wrapped in a blanket, her phone still glowing. He opened the door. Obama. It was Rachel, the nurse from the Revita floor, one of the only people who had ever been kind to her. Rachel looked around, then stepped inside. I don't have long. You need to see this. He handed over a flash drive. It's footage of Miles. He's been moving your records off-site. Jackson doesn't know. They're trying to extract your blood without you. Tonight. Claire's chest caved in. Why would he do that? Rachel hesitated. Because your blood might cure not just him, but everything. What do you mean, everything? Rachel swallowed. Parkinson's, ALS, early Alzheimer's, cancer. The tech they're building from you, it'll rewrite medicine. But they need you to be compliant, or unconscious. Claire collapsed into the chair. This can't be. Rachel leaned in. Jackson may have lied, but Miles, he's dangerous. You're not safe here anymore. Claire opened the flash drive on her laptop. As the hidden footage began to play, her breath caught. Screen, a sterile room, white walls, IV bags, a female form, limp on a stretcher. It was her, or someone exactly like her, and standing over the body, clipboard in hand. It was Jackson. He didn't speak, but he signed something. The camera zoomed. His signature written beside Miles Garrett's, dated 4 days ago. Claire screamed. The screen went black. Session 3, the woman in the stretcher. The scream caught in Claire's throat, but nothing came out. Just the harsh sound of her own breath, rising and falling like she was underwater. Her laptop screen was black now. The file had shut itself off, automatically, encrypted, time, and that meant someone had been watching her. Meanwhile, across town, Revita Labs. Jackson Whitmore stared at his trembling hand. The tremors had returned with a vengeance. Faster now, unpredictable, just like Miles had warned him. But the price of the treatment was what haunted him. He looked down at the NDA folder Miles had slid across the table last week, the one with Claire's name on it. You don't have to touch her, Miles had said. Just sign. We'll handle the science. She'll never even know. Jackson didn't answer them. But now he wished he had burned the damn thing. Because when he opened that lab video file and saw the woman on the stretcher, his soul fractured. She looked like Claire. She moved like Claire. But Clare had walked out of his hospital room. So who was that? And what had he signed on to? Back at Clare's apartment, Clare paced the room, still barefoot. The flash drive now sat on the table like a bomb. That woman, she wasn't just same scar near the clavicle, same mole on the inner wrist. It was her. Or a clone. Or a twin she never knew about. But God help her, was she being drugged? She grabbed her coat. Enough hiding, enough running, it was time to confront the truth. He stormed out, hailing a cab to the one place she swore she'd never return. Jackson's penthouse. Barkova, he was Jackson Whitmore's penthouse. It was like stepping back into a memory. Every surface gleamed, cold and untouched. Marble floors, midnight glass windows. The kind of view you never forget unless you were never invited to stand near it. Clare had only been here once, the night before he disappeared. The night he'd kissed her like she was oxygen, only to leave a letter under her pillow and vanish by sunrise. Now, 5 years later, she stepped through the doors unannounced and uninviting. Jackson's head snapped up from the piano bench. He stood slowly. He didn't say a word. He just tossed the flash drive onto the glass table. He looked at it, then back at her. His voice broke. You saw it. Her voice was steel. Who is she? Jackson sat down, like his bones couldn't hold the weight anymore. But he'd been found. Not Clare, please. I thought it was a decoy, a simulation. Miles said they needed something for the board and I was stupid. I didn't know they were using your DNA. Your son, she hissed. Yes, I signed, but I didn't understand. Then you don't deserve to touch a miracle like me, she spat. That line shattered something in him. Because she was right. Reveal. The woman on the stretcher wasn't alive. Jackson stood slowly, walked to the minibar and poured a trembling glass of bourbon. I found out last night, he whispered. The woman on that stretcher. She's gone. They terminated the trial. Miles called it a non-viable clone. But Clare, she had your memories, your voice. She sang the lullaby you hum when you're anxious. How would they know that? Claire's hands shook. They're not just copying you, he said. They're trying to replace you. Silence fell like snowfall. Emotional breakdown. Clare dropped onto the leather sofa. So what am I? She whispered. Am I just data? A formula they keep tweaking? No, Jackson said firmly. You're the original. The only. The one. He stuffed himself. Clare, he turned. Say it. Jackson's eyes filled with a decade of regret. If I hadn't left that night, if I hadn't let fear win, we might have had a life. I might have held your hand when your mother passed. I might have kissed you every morning for 5 years straight, but I didn't. His voice cracked. He ran, and that's my burden to carry, not yours. Clare looked at him, and for a moment the years between them disappeared. Knock on the door. Another twist. Before either of them could speak again, a knock echoed through the penthouse. Jackson frowned. I'm not expect... But Clare already knew. He stepped toward the door, and opened it. There stood Rachel, breathless, face pale. You need to come with me, now. What is it? Clare asked. Rachel looked over her shoulder nervously. They took something from the Revita vault. You need to see it before they move it offshore. Jackson stepped into the hallway too. What did they take? Rachel swallowed hard. An embo, she said. Claire's blood went cold. Flashback 5 years ago, Revita Labs. Unbeknownst to Clare, Jackson had donated tissue samples during her trial. The project was shelved, archived, forgotten. Until Nolok. And with her regenerative DNA and his cellular signature, he had created something living. Cliffhanger ending. Inside Rottel's car as it sped toward an underground facility in Queens, Clare stared at the image on the stolen USB. A grainy sonogram. It went to under 2 months ago. Label. Fetus viable what? Voss. Heartbeat. Claire through. And for the first time in her life, She didn't know if she was crying out of fear or love. Caption 4. The Sangrakhan Truth. Rain splattered across the windshield like static as Rachel's car raced down the midnight freeway. The city blurred past, neon signs smeared like bruises against the dark. The image of the sonogram replayed in her mind. Grainy pulsing. Got impossible. Her voice was a whisper, hoarse. It's mine. Rachel didn't answer. Though she didn't have to. Inside the underground vault Quincy. The facility wasn't on any map. No logo on the building. Just a steel door, a retinal scanner, and the silence that screamed. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered as a technician, no older than 20. This way. Sector 7B, he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Claire's feet felt numb. She kept walking. Behind a pane of soundproof glass, a small lab glowed softly, and inside it, floating in synthetic amber fluid, was a suspended incubator. On the monitor, gestication. A Lego O status, extracted. DNA, my 0.87%. Claire's knees gave out. Jackson caught her. His voice trembled. They harvested from us without consent. Rachel added, you were the only successful pairing. The other attempts failed within hours. But this embryo, it's not just viable. It's evolving. Claire looked at the flickering image again. A flicker of movement, a twitch, a heartbeat, and something inside her cracked wide open. Flashback. The day she lost hope. 5 years ago, the hospital. Claire on a gurney, bleeding. A pregnancy she never even knew about until it was too late. The doctor's words, spontaneous miscarriage, stress, you'll recover. But she never did. That's why she never told Jackson, why she buried it in a journal no one ever read. He thought it was gone forever. But they took it. They had stolen what she'd mourned. And now they wanted to raise it in glass? Claire's collapse, and the power of a mother's grief. Claire stepped into the chamber, ignoring protocol. The alarms didn't matter. Nothing mattered. He pressed her palm to the glass. He whispered through her tears, I'm your mother. Jackson stood behind her, his voice low. We'll get him out. Claire said without blinking. I can feel it. Rachel's voice cut in. If we don't move fast, they'll transfer her offshore. Miles is pushing for experimental acceleration. He wants... Claire turned. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she didn't look scared. She looked ready. Reveal. Miles's true intentions. Rockel pulled out a file. Miles isn't just building biological assets. He's trying to reverse engineer grief. She flipped open the file to show a graph. Empathy decline correlated with tech usage. He believes emotional connection is a weakness, that parenthood, love, attachment, all of it slows progress. Claire snapped. So he wants children without parents, love without cost. Jackson's voice dropped to a dark place. He wants to sell them. They pull out an extraction. We need 72 hours, Jackson said, to get legal leverage, shut down the vault, and ensure custody. Claire didn't blink, no. We have tonight. Richie hesitated. Claire, no more delays, no more waiting for permission. She's mine, and I won't let her be born into a lab. Emotional climax. The mother awakens. That night, Claire returned home alone. She lit a candle, sat with her old journal, the one she hadn't opened since the miscarriage. On the inside cover, a single line, if love created you, no science can unmake you. She read it aloud. Then she turned the page and found something she didn't remember writing. A sketch. A child's face, big eyes, curly hair, labeled in her handwriting, hope. He sobbed. And for the first time in years, they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of fight. Ending hook, a call comes in. Her phone buzzed at midday. The unknown number. He answered, and Miles's voice filled her ear. Who found the baby? Claire's blood froze. "Don't worry," he said, "you'll see her soon. But not in the way you're hoping." Click. The line went dead. Clary looked at the candle, and at her reflection, and whispered, "You've taken everything once, but I swear, you won't take her." Session 5. The Extraction Plan. Cock. Opening scene. Rain-slicked rooftop. Root. Lightning cracked across the skyline as Claire stood on the rooftop of a parking garage overlooking downtown Manhattan. She wore a black coat, soaked to the bone, her arms wrapped tight around her body as if holding herself together. She wasn't the same woman who once baked blueberry muffins for the neighbors' kids and cried watching Little Women. She had become something else. A woman with nothing left to lose and a child to reclaim. Behind him, Jackson emerged from the shadows, hood pulled low. "Be sure about this?" Claire. He didn't turn. "If we wait another day, they'll move her. I'll never see her again." He exhaled. "Then we'd do it tonight." Inside Miles Harrington's fortress. Miles Harrington's private facility was more than a lab. It was a fortress disguised as a clean tech startup in Tribeca. Armed guards, biometric locks, underground chambers. No paper trail, no oversight. Rachel had managed to pull part of the floor plan before she was locked out. Level B housed the genetic incubators. Only one exit. Surveillance blind spots minimal. The embryo was scheduled for relocation within 24 hours. A plane had already been fueled. If they didn't act now, Claire would lose her child forever. The team comes together. Jackson brought in 2 more people. Noah Reyes, a retired Navy engineer with a debt to Kettle and an old grudge against Miles. Ren Lee, a cybersecurity genius who once cracked a Pentagon firewall on a dare. Claire didn't ask how Jackson knew them. She only asked one question: will they keep her safe? Jackson nodded. With their lives. Rocco rolled out a schematic on the table of an abandoned brownstone safe house. "There's one maintenance route no one monitors," she explained. "Underground. Flooded since 2012, but if Noah can rig the pumps." "I can get you there," Noah grunted, "but once we breach, it's 10 minutes max before the system flags us." Rin added, "I'll loop the surveillance for 9. After that, we're ghosts." Claire asked quietly, "And the extraction?" Rocco pulled out a tiny black case. "This portable containment pod stabilizes the fetus in transit, but it has to be operated manually." Everyone went quiet. Clary stepped forward. "Then I'll do it." Nightfall. The night was black silk. Claire, dressed in all black, hair braided tight, jaw set. Jackson handed her an earpiece and a flashlight. Noah gave her a bulletproof vest, just in case. Rachel whispered, "She has your eyes, you know." Claire swallowed hard. Underground infiltrate. The tunnel smelled of rot and old iron. Noah's rig groaned as it pushed the water back just enough to wade through. Rin's voice echoed in their ears. 5 minutes to breach point. Jackson led the way, flashlight slicing through the dark. Claire followed, her heartbeat sinking with every step. Her hands didn't tremble. She felt calm. The kind of calm only grief can teach you. They reached the vault. The door was 3 feet thick, keycard locked, biometric sealed. Ren whispered, "Stand by." On her screen, numbers raced. "Ben, you're..." Noah jammed the latch open. The vault hissed. Inside, rows of suspended incubators. Clinical. Cold. Each one tagged. Claire ran to the one she'd memorized. "You know, 200. Her hands found the release. The lights flickered, and the chobby unlocked. Claire reached in, her gloves trembling now, and crabbled the synthetic womb inside the containment pod. It was warm. Alive. Your child. The requirement flooded the chamber. Rin's voice screamed in their ears. "They know, move now." Aaron. Doors locking. Jackson grabbed Claire's arm. "Let's go." But as they turned, Miles Harrington stepped into the room. flanked by 2 guards, small like he had been waiting all along. I knew you'd come, Miles said smoothly. Mothers are predictable. Claire tightened her grip on the pod. You're not taking her. Miles tilted his head. She's not a her, she's a prototype. My prototype. Jackson stepped forward. Back off. Miles smirked. Ah, Jackson. Loyal to the end. But you know how this ends, don't you? Claire's eyes burned. No. This is where it begins. Do it. Twist Jackson's hidden file. Without warning, Jackson held up a small flash drive. Before I left, I copied your patents. Every experiment. Every unauthorized DNA sample. Every name. He tossed it to Rachel, who caught it like a lifeline. Miles paled. Jackson's voice was steel. Release us or your entire empire goes to the feds tonight. The escape. Miles didn't speak. He simply nodded to the guards. They lowered their weapons. Claire didn't look back. She ran with the pod in her arms, the way mothers ran from war, from fire, from death itself. Back at the safe house. The pod was placed on a medical bed. Monitors beeped. Rachel stabilized it. Heartbeat steady, she said. Claire collapsed beside it, shaking. Jackson knelt beside her, breathless. You did it. Claire looked at the glowing image on the screen. Tiny limbs, a rising chest. He whispered, welcome home, Hope. Final hook, the birth certificate. Later that night, Wren found a sealed envelope in the medical pod, hidden in a compartment. And inside was a piece of paper. Certificate of live harvest, subject. But something was off. Father, Jake Jackson Wilder. Mother, Claire Monroe. File 6 years ago. Claire stared at it. Before the miscarriage. Filed while she was still pregnant. A cold realization swept through the room. He turned to Jackson. Did you know? He frowns. Silence. Then, Claire, if I told you the truth back then, you never would have loved me. Session 6. The lies he hid for love. Opening flashback. 6 years ago. The white room. The walls were white. Too white. The kind of sterile, echoing white that made even the silence feel cold. Claire lay in the hospital bed, barely awake, still groggy from anesthesia. A nurse entered with a clipboard but said nothing, just handed it to the tall man at the foot of the bed. But in this memory, he wasn't the Jackson Claire had fallen for. He looked haunted, angry, lost. He signed something on the form without asking, without her consent. On the line that said, Father's acknowledgement. He whispered to the nurse. You stood the embryo code. Present day. The morning. Claire stood in the safe house kitchen, hands gripping the counter, the paper still trembling in her hands. The certificate of live harm. Filed before she lost the baby. Filed with Jackson's name on it. He had known. All these years he had known their child was alive. He turned as Jackson entered, freshly stitched up from the wound he got during the escape. You lied to me, she said. He didn't. I did. The confession. Claire's voice was ice. You let me grieve her. You let me bury nothing in a box. For 6 years, Jackson. His eyes filled, but his tone stayed even. I wasn't trying to hurt you. What the hell were you doing? Jackson walked to the table, sat down, and finally spoke the truth he'd buried deeper than any secret. Well, we found out about the miscarriage. I was shattered, but Dr. Ellis, he called it an experimental harvest. 1 in a billion chance. I knew it was illegal. I knew you'd say no. But Claire, I couldn't lose her. Not both of you, so I signed the... Claire's lips trembled. And then you left me, took a job in Singapore and disappeared. Jackson looked down. I thought it was better if you hated me, than lived knowing what I did. Claire sat down slowly, her eyes distant. I remember something now from that night. A voice, whispering at my bedside. She looked up. It was you, wasn't it? Jackson nodded. I never left that night. I stayed until they took her. Claire whispered, You said her name. Hope, he finished, because that's what she was, for both of us. The emotional shatter. Claire stood again, tears falling freely now. You made a choice for me, for her. You stole my grief and kept the miracle. Jackson stepped toward her. I thought I was protecting... No. You were protecting yourself. From the guilt, from the fallout. From me. Silence fell like a bomb between them. Then Claire's voice broke. If I can forgive... Rachel's... Before Jackson could respond, Rachel burst into the room, holding her laptop. You both need to see this. He turned to screen. Rin had decrypted a second layer of data on the chip Jackson stole. Inside were files, not just about Hope, but dozens of harvested embryos. And not just anonymous subjects. Names. Real people. Many of them were Claire's patients, young women she'd worked with at the community center, told their stories, held their hands. Their babies had been taken too. Claire's purpose. Claire's grip now burned into something else. Fear. These weren't just stolen experiments, she whispered. These were children. She turned to Jackson. We're not just running anymore. We expose Miles. We end this. Jackson looked into her eyes. And this time she saw the boy she once loved, and the man she no longer knew. The final scene. Claire's journal entry. That night, Claire sat beside the containment pod, watching the slow rhythmic heartbeat echo on the screen. He opened a leather-bound journal, the same one she'd used after the miscarriage again, and began writing again. They told me I lost you, that you were gone before you had a name, but now I know you were taken, not lost. And I will never let them take you again. Yeah. Session 7. The War for Hope. Opening scene. The storm brews. The night outside the safe house was no longer still. Rin's weather app warned of a thunderstorm coming in from the coast, but inside the storm had already begun. Claire stood at the window watching lightning fork through the clouds, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Behind her, Rachel, Rin, and Jackson reviewed blueprints of a biotech facility labeled Miravault. Hope was inside. So were dozens of other harvested embryos, children, unknowing lives, warehoused like data. And time was running out. Plan of action. Rachel slammed her laptop shut. We have 72 hours before Miles moves the vault offshore. After that, the embryos disappear into international law. Ghost. Rin nodded. Security's tighter than a Pentagon server. Retina scans, thermal sensors. There's no hacking in this time. Claire turned. Then we're not hacking, we're walking in. Jackson looked up sharply. Claire. She cut him off. You want to protect her? Then help me do it. Whisk. A familiar name in the files. Before they left, Rin quietly pulled Claire aside. There's something else. One of the files in the embryo batch, it's labeled Project EM1. Claire's eyes narrowed. So? Rin hesitated. The donor match on the maternal DNA. It's your mother. Claire reeled. My mother died when I was 9. Exactly. Which means this embryo was stored nearly 20 years ago, before Miravault even existed. Backstory bombshell, a generational experiment. Jackson, overhearing, filled in the missing puzzle piece. Miles had been at this longer than we thought. He didn't just start the experiment with Hope. He perfected it using your mother. Claire's voice was hollow. So as he wasn't just recruited to that community center, I was bred for it. Her hands trembled. This was never just about me. Its legacy, its control, its... Scene cut. Miravault headquarters. Miles's den. Miles Behringer poured himself a glass of wine as security footage flickered across his screen. He watched Jackson's escape frame by frame. He watched Claire cry over the sonogram. He even smiled. She's remembering, he murmured. Behind him, a woman emerged, cold, statuesque with silver hair. Her name, Dr. Marianne Locke, the original architect of the embryo program. She'll come for the child, Locke said. Miles raised his glass. Let her. She was always part of the plan. The infiltration begins. Disguised as medical contractors, Claire, Jackson, Rachel, and Ren arrive at Miravault under pretense of a system audit. Claire wears her old social work badge. Rachel plays the data specialist. Jackson walks with a limp, a battle wound he earned escaping from the last lie he told. They move through sterile white halls. One wrong step and the system alerts security. But Claire doesn't blink, because for the first time in 6 years, she knows why she's breathing. Her daughter is real, alive, waiting. The complication, Rachel Inside the server wing, Rachel hits a trip sensor. A steel door slams down. Jackson runs to her, but Claire pulls him back. Is she buying us time? We stick to the plan. Over the comms, Rick, get to the vault. I'll reroute the heat sensors and loop the cameras. But you've got less than 20 minutes before the backup generator resets. After that, inside the vault. The door to the embryo chamber is colder than ice. Claire lays her hand on the scanner. It recognizes her. DNA access from her own cells used in Project Hope. The door has opened. Inside, rows of glowing chambers, dozens of embryos floating in frozen amber, names etched into digital plaques. He walks slowly past EM1, past the and she sees it. Project Hope. Ever 22, B. He reaches for the override panel, but the lights flicker. A siren begins to wail. Miles's last card. Miles and Dr. Locke appear on the main security screen. Welcome back, Clay. Locke coos. Take one step closer to that chamber, Miles adds, and the entire unit self-destructs. Jackson slams a fist against the glass. You Monsica. But Claire's eyes are calm. She places a hand on the scanner anyway. Miles snarls. And Claire says one line that silences the world. If I die trying to save her, at least she'll know her mother fought. Can you say the same, Miles? The twistipod unlocks. It chose her. Instead of detonating, the system accepts Claire's override. What? Because Project Hope had a failsafe. A maternal imprint. Only Claire's heart rate, breath pattern, and tear protein. It wasn't just science. It was love. Extraction under fire. Alarms blare. Armed guards flood the halls. Jackson and Rin fend them off, while Claire, carrying the containment case with Hope's embryo, races toward the extraction point. Rachel, bruised but grinning, meets them at the emergency stairwell. Guess who took down Miravault's security grid? As the storm cracks the sky open above them, the group dives into a waiting SUV. Behind them, the vault begins to collapse, not by sabotage but by its own corrupted foundation. The truth always rots the roots. Closing scene, in the rain. Claire steps out into the storm, holding the case close to her chest. He looked to Jackson. Tell me again that this was real. He places a hand over hers. She's real. I know she's so. But Claire shakes her head. No, not yet. He looked forward into the night. Not until every girl they stole is given back her name. Session 8. The girl with no birthday. Opening scene. A house they never thought they'd return to. The rain had slowed, but the ache hadn't. Claire sat at the edge of the old nursery in her grandmother's abandoned house. Dust covering faded wallpaper. A crib untouched since the day she lost everything. He held the embryo containment unit in her lap, but her eyes weren't on the glowing panel. They were on the wall, where she used to draw birthdays, imaginary ones. April 14, she whispered, then crossed it out. 3. Gonna get. She never knew, because Hope had no birth date. Just a file date, a code, not. Claire's mission, to give her a name, a day, a life. Jackson watched from the doorway. His shirt was still torn from the Miravault escape, but his eyes were softened. She's safe, he said. Clary didn't move. She's not real yet. Not until she has a story. He stepped forward. Then let's write her one. But Claire turned, her voice low, steady. grieving and maternal. No, let's find the pieces they stole first. But twist of Project Hope was not the only one. Ren sat on the porch with Rachel, scrolling through decrypted Miravault logs on her cracked tablet. He paused, then blinked. Scrolled again. There are 11 more, she whispered. Richie turned. 11 what? Other embryo created from Claire's genetic imprint. But Claire was a child. They used her cells from childhood trials, without consent. They've been building derivatives. Rachel's jaw clenched. You told me there are more girls like Hope. No, I'm telling you. There are more daughters. Flashback. Claire's mother. The origin they buried. Claire's grandmother had kept everything. But Rachel found the shoeboxes in the attic. Notebooks, journals, a ribbon with honor student, and one faded Polaroid of Claire's mother in a hospital gown, holding a file labeled Miragen Trials. From the back. If I disappear, tell Claire to never trust the ones with white coats and black cards. Claire stared at it for hours. So it wasn't just theft. It was erasure. An impossible decision. Hope or the others. Ren. They're splitting the remaining embryos across multiple continents. Zurich, Jakarta, Dubai. Private collectors, government shelves. The kind of places we can't touch. Jackson slammed a drawer. It would bring them home, one by one. Rachel shook her head. You want to save them all? Great. But Hope still doesn't exist yet. She's a file in a box until we find a legal surrogate or a lab willing to risk their license. Claire stood slowly. Need to carry her myself. The risk. Claire's body can't handle it. Rami, the only doctor they trusted, reviewed the data. His face went pale. Claire, you had uterine scarring from the incident 6 years ago. Your body might not survive implantation. I survived worse, she said. This isn't just pain. This is death. But Claire looked at the screen. Hope's cells pulsed like a tiny heartbeat. Not yet formed, but trying. Then if I die, Claire whispered, make sure she's born knowing her mother chose her. Meanwhile, in Miles Regrips, a private plane crossing the Atlantic, Miles Beringer watched Miravault's ashes on the news. Claire Monroe is alive, his advisor said, and she's building public sympathy. Miles didn't flinch. She won't matter once the next generation comes online. But the girl... Miles sipped his scotch. Then we make sure she never does. The implantation... Claire lay back, eyes closed, as Dr. Rami inserted the embryo. She didn't cry. He was thinking. He just pressed one hand to her belly. Happy birthday, my girl, she whispered. Whatever day you choose to be born, that's the day I'll finally believe in miracles again. Rachel's project, Rebuilded No. While Claire rested, Rachel launched a digital campaign under an anonymous name. The Daughters Project. It began with a single lie. What if the first birthday you had was stolen? The post went viral in 2 days. Thousands of women responded, many from clinical trials, IVF donors, or Black Ops medical programs. A movement began. But then, a stranger knocks. 3 days after implantation, a woman in her 60s arrived at the farmhouse. Her name was Evelyn Calloway. Her eyes were tired, but her posture was military straight. I saw the photo, she said to Claire, holding up the printout of her mother. She was my sister. Claire, my mother had a sister. We changed her name after the trial. We thought she was dead. He stepped forward. I think I might be your aunt, Claire, and I think I was part of this program too. Closing scene. A new family, a new fight. That night, Claire sat by the window again, cradling her abdomen. Rain tapped softly. Her aunt was sleeping in the guest room. Jackson was snoring on the couch. Rachel was drafting a press release. And when he stood on the porch, laptop glowing, she turned to Claire and smiled. You're not the girl with no birthday anymore. You're the woman who gave it back. Section 9. The day the world heard her cry. The opening scene. The scream that shattered everything. The scream didn't come from pain. It came from life. Claire was in the hallway of the courthouse, collapsed. Jackson turned, Rachel froze mid-step. Rin dropped her tablet. A ripple of silence overtook the rotunda. It was happening. Too soon, too fast. And yet, right on time. Because the world was watching. But Rachel takes the stand. 30 minutes earlier, Rachel had stood before the Congressional Ethics Panel. Behind her, a mural-sized image of Hope Sandagram. "My name is Rachel Monroe," she said, "and this," her hand trembled as she pointed to the glowing screen, "is the evidence of a crime no one was meant to find." The panel's chairman raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Monroe, are you implying a living embryo was stolen and experimented on without parental knowledge?" Rocky looked up. Her voice didn't break. "No, sir, I'm not implying. I'm confessing. We helped them do it." Flashback. The cry she silenced years ago. 6 years ago, Rachel had walked past a sterilized lab. Inside, a tiny sound echoed through the glass, like the mewl of a cat. She never forgot it. She told herself it was equipped, told herself it wasn't a heartbeat. But that night, under oath, she admitted it all. He heard, she whispered, and I stayed silent. Claire's collapse got live, on every network. Inside the hearing, Jackson caught Claire as she buckled. Blood stained the hem of her coat. The baby piant was fighting to hold on. Security cleared the hall. A bystander live-streamed the moment, his phone shaking as Claire whispered. In less than an hour, 14 million people watched that clip. They didn't know the child's name, but they knew the sound of a mother trying not to die before meeting her daughter. Emergency, the battle for Hope's life begins. Claire was rushed to an undisclosed hospital under USO Marshal. Wren hacked the system mid-transit to wipe her from public records. Inside the emergency ward, Dr. Rami stood white-knuckled over her chart. "She's hemorrhaging," he said. "We can try to stabilize her." But the baby didn't finish. Jackson reached for Claire's hand. "Stay with me. Stay with her." Claire turned her head, burying it. "Named," he breathed. "No." Jackson always said, tears in his throat. "We name her to get." Miles Barringer. In a private underground compound, Miles watched the news with narrowed eyes. The girl wasn't even born, and yet she was more powerful than he had ever been. "She's uniting them," his advisor said. "The lab rats, the whistleblowers, even the investors are flipping." Miles leaned, "And we didn't just stop the baby. We buried them out." And erase her story. A digital uprising. But it was too late. The hashtags exploded across platforms. Artists painted murals of a faceless mother screaming in a hallway. Nurses across the country held silent vigils. And then came the bombshell. Rocket, he leaked every Miraval document. Names, locations, genetic blueprints, signed approvals. The world gasped. Clare Monroe wasn't just a woman. He was the original subject. Claire wakes to a miracle. 3 days later, Claire opened her eyes to soft thought and the beeping of machines. She looked down. A tiny pink cap lay nestled against her chest. And just like that, he wasn't alone anymore. "She came early," Durrami said gently, "but strong. Full lungs, no complications." Claire cried for the first time. "But she has a name now," Rachel said, entering with flowers. "The world gave it to her." Claire looked up, dazed. "Hope?" Rachel smiled. "Hope Monroe, born the day the world heard her cry." In Jackson's vow. That night, as cameras flashed outside the hospital, Jackson knelt beside Claire's bed. He pulled a velvet box from his jacket, opened it. No diamonds, no fanfare. Just a thin gold band engraved with 2 dates. Claire's birthday, and Hope's. "I once told myself I'd never love again," he said. "But that scream, you woke me up." He placed the ring on her finger. You saved her, Claire. Well, let's skim my life making sure she never forgets it." Claire looked at her daughter, then back at the man who stayed, and whispered, "Yeah, Milo, arrested." In a dramatic midnight raid, federal agents seized Miravalt's remaining properties. Miles Behringer was arrested on 17 counts of human experimentation, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. He smiled as he was handcuffed. "They'll replace me." But the officer only said, "Maybe, but your legacy ends tonight." Closing scene: the first candle. Weeks later, the farmhouse was full of warmth again. A single candle glowed in the center of the room. Claire, wrapped in soft linen, held her daughter close. "Rocco Ron Valk Bouleon." "Make a wish," Jackson whispered. Claire "No need." He kissed his daughter's forehead. If she already came true. Section 10. The Man Who Saved Her, Twice. Opening scene. A question only a daughter could ask. It was raining the morning Claire brought baby Hope to the quiet cemetery on the hill. No cameras, no reporters, just mother and child, and an old, weather-worn gravestone. "My dad," Clara whispered, laying down a white lily. "I never got to tell you what they did to me, but she's here. She's safe now." Hope cooed in her arms, unaware of the storm her tiny existence had calmed. Then Claire said something no one expected. "I'm going to forgive him." Jackson, standing behind her, looked up in silence. "Are you sure?" She turned, her eyes clearer than ever before. "He saved me, even when I didn't want him to." Flashback: the first time Jackson saved her. 6 years ago, Claire had been curled up in the corner of her tiny apartment, wrists bruised from hospital restraints, her records marked gang. No one had believed her, not even her own sister, until a knock came at the door. Jackson, disheveled, angry, but strangely gentle. "I read the files," he'd said, "and I saw the footage they deleted. You weren't hallucinating." He hadn't trusted him then, but he didn't leave. Instead, he brought groceries, sat on the floor with her, listened to her cry. That was the first time he saved her. When the world decided she was broken, he called her brave. Now, the hospital that bears her name. Months after the congressional hearing, something impossible happened. Congress unanimously passed the Hope Act, prohibited genetic experimentation without full adult consent, and funded the construction of a trauma care facility, the Hope Monroe Women's Hospital. At the opening, Claire didn't speak from a podium. He simply placed her palm on a brass nameplate and whispered, "May no woman be silenced again." The applause thundered. But what made her cry was when she saw the next plaque, right beside it. Dedicated to Jackson Reed, the man who believed her. The letter Jackson never meant to. One cold night, while organizing boxes at the farmhouse, Claire found an envelope tucked behind a stack of baby clothes. Her name was on it, handwritten. Inside, a single page. "Claire, if the first time I saw you at that clinic you looked like hell, but you smiled at the nurse holding someone else's baby. I knew then you were made for love, not laboratories. I didn't fight for you hard enough back then. I froze when they pulled you into that dark room. I thought I'd lose my job, my career, but I lost something worse. I lost the chance to be the man who never lets go. If this world ever gives me a second, I'll take it." Claire folded the letter, held it to her chest, and cried for all the years they wasted, and all the ones they had left. The return of Ren, a code that can't be broken. Ren had disappeared after the trial. No one knew where she'd gone until one night a drone dropped a package at Claire's doorstep. Inside, a hard drive and a note. For her future. This is everything they didn't like. Use it wisely. Protect her. And don't forget, you were never alone. When inside the drive, research protocols, biometric algorithms, a codebase that could cure hundreds of conditions Hope might one day face. Jackson stared at the screen. "She gave us the tools," he said, stunned. "Now it's our job to use them for good." A fire they didn't expect. One stormy evening, the farmhouse caught fire, lightning striking the main wing. Clare barely made it out carrying hope. Jackson kicked down a door to rescue an old file cabinet containing every physical document on her case. But as the flames rose, he didn't see the beam above him crack. Clare screamed his name. "I'm slow." And just like before, he ran toward her, not away. "Give me the baby," he shouted. "I've got... just go." He passed Hope into his arms and collapsed on the porch as the roof caved in behind him. They all lived. But Jackson's left arm would never be the same again. Later he joked, "Now I've got an excuse to never fold laundry." But Clare knew better. He hadn't saved her once. He'd done it twice. Final scene, the Val before the world. At a small vineyard in Vermont, under an arch of winter roses, Clare stood in a simple ivory dress. No reporters, just chosen family, and baby Hope in a flower crown. Jackson took her hand. He didn't say vows, he didn't need to. He just said, "If that night 6 years ago I hadn't walked away, maybe none of this would have happened. Maybe we could have had peace instead of war." Clare squeezed his hand. "But then there would be no hope. And I wouldn't trade her for all the quiet in the world." He nodded, eyes wet. "Then let's never be quiet again. Let's tell her story. Let's tell ours." They kissed under a sky that had finally stopped crying. Closing a Montez, legacy in motion. The young girl runs through the garden, laughter echoing. Clare leads trauma therapy sessions for women who once thought no one believed them. Jackson teaches ethics at Stanford. Racho launches an organization called Project Second Cry. Ren remains a myth in hacker circles, but every time a lab is exposed, her calling card appears. And as the screen fades to black, we hear Clara's voice. They tried to erase her, but the world remembered her cry. And in remembering, we learned to listen again, what love was meant to be. In a world that once reduced her to a file number, Clare Monroe became something no scientist, no lab, no billionaire could engineer. A mother, a voice, and most of all, a believer in love again. He wasn't rescued by wealth. He wasn't rewritten by revenge. She was rebuilt by truth, faith, and a man who chose her twice, once in fear, and once in full courage. Jackson Jackie Garfindy just loved her. He stood still in the storm with her. And for every woman watching who has ever been silenced, dismissed, or told she was too emotional to be believed, Clare's story is yours too. Because being soft never meant being weak. And being broken never meant beyond repair. Life lessons from Clare's journey. 1. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet man who stays. Jackson didn't come with flowers. He came with apologies, with groceries, with presents. Real love doesn't always declare itself in grand gestures. It shows up. In fire, in courtrooms, in the middle of the night when no one else does. 2. You're not crazy for remembering pain others want you to forget. Clare was gaslit by the very system meant to protect her. But memory is not madness. It's proof you survived. Never let anyone shame your truth because it's inconvenient to theirs. 3. Your child doesn't need a perfect mother. They need a present one. Hope didn't care that her mother was broken. She only cared that Clare held her tight when the world felt cold. Even in your worst moment, your love is enough. You are enough. 4. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's reclaiming your freedom. Clare didn't forget what they did to her, but she chose not to let it chain her. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. For your healing. For your tomorrow. 5. There is no expiration date on starting again. Clare found love, voice, and legacy at her lowest point. Not in her 20s. Not when she had it all together. To the woman watching this, wondering if it's too late. The second half of your life can be more beautiful than the first, because now you know what truly matters. If this story moved you, if it made you cry, hope, or believe again, don't keep it to yourself. Like to show you still believe in love that heals. Comment below. What moment broke you? What moment healed you? Share this with a woman who needs to remember. She is not forgotten, her cry still echoes, and someone will come for her. Because love doesn't always come in a limo. Sometimes it knocks in the rain. And fine.